Hey there everybody, in this video we're going to be talking about why you aren't taking better photos. We're going to hit on four main themes. We're going to be talking about perspective, we're going to be talking about your gear, we're going to be talking about what you aren't doing, and we're going to be talking about what you should be doing. So let's start off with perspective. Let's think about getting close to our subjects. Getting close to your subject is a very near relation to getting low in relation to your subject for automatically improving your photography. From emphasizing bokeh with portraits to showing a foreground element that can really provide context in landscape photography. Getting close to your subject will make your viewer know exactly what it is that you're trying to draw attention to. This will make your images more intimate. It'll give your viewers nearly behind the scenes access to your subjects. It's honest. It shows the viewer a new way to look at an old subject. It allows for more storytelling and more engagement by the viewer with your image. For myself, I'm not super comfortable getting close to people like in street photography. It makes me feel like I'm invading people's personal privacy. But getting close to your subject isn't just useful with street photography. In doing these two big volume photography gigs that I've just done, I've realized that in showing images of their kids to parents on the field, the parents seem to really respond well to being able to capture who their kid is by getting closer to the subject. And the images that parents seem to have mostly purchased is when I was all up in the action, or when I was doing something closer to a headshot or a mid-length portrait shot, where I was closer to what was going on. So from a sales perspective, getting close has seemed to work out really well. Here's a quick funny. When I was in Isla Mujeres off the coast of Mexico earlier this year, I was going for a landscape shot. It was nice and low, getting the foreground. It was right off a cliff into the sea. And out of nowhere, a Mavic Pro just rose up and just scared me out of my skin. It turned out there was a couple getting honeymoon or wedding photography done by a guy with a drone, or videography, I'm not entirely sure. Anyway, in terms of getting close to a subject, even if that subject isn't a person, sometimes getting close can still be dangerous. Now let's talk about limiting your gear. And with the idea of limiting your gear, there's also the idea of learning your gear. So if you're like me, you have 4 or 5 places that you really like to go to regularly, get some fresh air, get some coffee, whatever. Oftentimes these places are also ripe for photo walks or just snapping a few awesome pictures. In my opinion, photo walks are kind of the best. Just about every time I go out, I try to use a different lens than the time before. It's not necessary to use only one lens for months at a time, although that will help. Just use a different focal length or lens each time. If you have a zoom, limit yourself to a particular focal length at that zoom. This will force you to rethink your favorite subjects and compositions, forcing you to learn more about how to use your gear and keeping you on your toes. Pretty soon you'll have a very clear idea of your gear's strengths and limitations, and so when you're presented with a new subject, you'll think differently about what you want to shoot with, what you want to get. You'll think a little bit differently about what you want to use to be a little bit more creative and show your subject in a new and interesting light. I've been trying to do this to limit my focal length to the extent that on my Canon system, I haven't actually picked up my 24-105 in like months until just recently, when I realized this. That's a little bit funny to me because of just how useful I think that focal range is. But more than that, I feel like I kind of go in phases with my lenses. Right now, I'm a little bit more prime heavy. I've even been taking my Sigma 50-100 f1.8 art lens for my crop sensor cameras and putting that on my 6D and treating it like a 100mm prime because it's fun. It's really fun. And I've been using it at 100mm because otherwise there's pretty awful vignetting. It's kind of funny. I was out shooting the other day with that combo, and a guy approached me and asked me to shoot a couple images of him. And it was kind of an interesting situation. I was like, sure, no problem. But this guy had a very clear idea of just exactly what he wanted. And I couldn't quite back up far enough using it just at 100mm to get the framing and composition that I wanted. He seemed to think that just because I was carrying around a big camera and lens meant that I could make any image that I wanted in the world. I ended up sending him a few images quickly, thanks to the Wi-Fi feature of my 6D, and then I beat a hasty retreat because I didn't want to work for free anymore. Have any of y'all had any similar experiences? Let's talk about what you're not doing. What you're not doing is trying something new. Although I'm a big fan of returning to the same places, limiting my focal length, limiting my aperture, limiting whatever artificially in order to learn, it's important to also find ways to apply what you're learning. Trying something new could be taking portraits only with a wide-angle lens, or landscapes only with a telephoto or a macro lens. It could also be popping on a trusty lens and going somewhere completely new. Obvious, you say, perhaps. But continuing to have small adventures and departures from the norm will make you think a little bit more about particular elements of your photography, like style, framing, and composition. New places and new subjects are challenges that will help you grow as a photographer. And there's one more big way to try something new, and that's in the edit. Play with tone curves, play with the HSL panel if you're using Lightroom. Doing this will help you learn your software better and pay dividends down the line, because you're investing in yourself by learning. I try to try new things all the time, except for coffee. Coffee is a ritual. Anyways, when the opportunity arose to do those volume gigs that I've just done, I absolutely jumped at the chance. It was, in terms of imaging, super straightforward, and that was a big surprise for me. I thought it would be much more difficult than it ended up being, but there were learning experiences. For example, I had no idea that my 6D had different AF points for portrait and landscape modes, and then when, unfortunately that became an issue, I had to quick fast learn how to sort it out. And I did. And you know what? It's making money, which is great. I wouldn't have had the opportunity to make a little bit better money than a senior portrait session if I hadn't, been willing to try something new. And I only got the chance because I'd previously done photography that was in the vein of what I was trying to do, just on a whim. So, you gotta try new things, and there will be opportunities that show up because of trying new things. And finally, what you should be doing, limiting how much you shoot. With cameras like the A9 and now the A7R III that has a very impressive mechanical shutter, and even the G9 that we're seeing with 20, 60 FPS, with these high frames per second cameras, it's going to be very easy to just motor drive. And it's kind of fun sometimes to allow yourself to do that. But by limiting how much you shoot, you're going to also see some really cool things happen. There are myriad ways to go about this. You could take with you only a small card, 16 or 32 gigabytes. You could shoot only single frames. But let me tell you why it's worthwhile. Much like limiting a lens or a focal length on a photo walk, limiting how much you shoot will also force you to be more creative and more intentional. If you can only take 1 or 2 pictures of a subject, you'll have to get it right. You'll have to get it all right. Exposure, framing, composition, all of that will have to be spot on the first time. Of course, I would never suggest this for a paid shoot. But if you do this, the next time you show up at but if you do this intentionally, the next time you show up at your next shoot, be it paid or pics of your kiddos, whatever, you'll be that much more intentional with your shooting, and your images will be that much better. Apart from the practicality of not having to weed out 150 or so images out of 800 like I recently had to do for a first birthday party that I shot, which was a huge pain, limiting how much you shoot has a lot of practical benefit. Think of it as a creative limitation. These always scream to me skill builder, right? And when I first started cycling, I was like, oh my gosh, I really want to be able to ride with no handlebars, like without having my hands on the handlebars. And that was a big thing for me. And you know what? Using that as a skill builder, as an example of a skill builder, really shows how creative limitations, how skill builders are free, and how it's all about learning and growing for the express purpose of learning and growing. So learning how to ride with no handlebars was a huge deal for me. It was a huge skill builder, and I was so proud of myself. I know I don't cycle as much as I should, but I'm working on it. I find when I'm focusing on getting the right shots, when I'm limiting how much I shoot and focus on getting the right shots, the camera stays at my hip in my hand down low where I'm not using it a lot more often. I'm soaking the experience in a little bit better. My partner loves it when I'm more present as well. And by being more open to the actual experience, I'm actually getting the right photos a lot more easily because I'm much more cogent of what's going on. And I also find myself learning a lot more in editing. I just learned how to do a particular color grade that I was super interested in learning how to do, which was so nice. I'm so proud of myself. It's a little bit sad, but I'm also just, gonna take it as a win. But I find that I'm not fixing the image in the edit. I'm enhancing it because I have the right picture. That's about all I have for you today. Please don't hesitate to smash that like button and subscribe. If you're interested in the gear that I used to make this video, check out the links in the description. Those are Amazon affiliate links. They'll kick back a small fee if you elect to purchase anything through those. and they won't add anything to the cost of the items that you're looking at. So thank you very much for your time and for your attention. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next one.